gì đâu gì mà maybe mình cần co nó còn tiền cái gì hết tiền không nữa.
That was scary.
All right, I'll kick it off this week.
You go.
Hi, welcome to Cambridge Inside Out. My name is Robert Winters, and I live in Cambridge. And to my left,
Hi, I'm Susanna Sagat, and he lives in Cambridge.
that's right.
Welcome to Cambridge Inside Out. It's a really wintry day out there. It's a blustery, wintry day.
Actually, I as I was walking over here, I walked in the door, I commented, it's sort of like an urban Norman Rockwell scene
It's
out there.
beautiful.
You know, with the snowflakes coming down, the colored lights, the dancers over Mass Ave, and everybody in Central Square is friendly to each other this time of year. Oh, that it should be true all year round. But I know it really was quite beautiful. It is quite beautiful out there tonight. So let's see.
Well, you know what I'd like to do?
What would you like to do?
I'd like to encourage people to call in.
We could do that.
This is probably our last show of the year.
Yeah, actually, we're unsettled. I think we're pretty much not going to be here next week because
We're not
of
gonna be
Christmas
here.
Eve. I don't yet know
And
about
I don't think
New
we're going
Year's.
to be here New Year's Eve.
No, we
Chances are slim.
I'll bring little whistles and
But
horns and things.
we are coming back in January.
That's right. We'll be back.
Robert and I are coming back in January.
That's right.
We're going to continue this show Tuesdays, 5:30 to 6:30. I don't know until when, because you're
Until
not
they
calling us,
throw us
so
off the air.
we don't even know if you're watching or not, so
That's
we
it.
can't use that as a
No,
guidepost.
that's absolutely right. So let's see. What do we have to say this
So
week?
call in.
That's right. Call in. And the number is 617-876-0055. And until then, we're just going to talk. A couple of quick news updates. Not that we want to go blathering on forever about elections and such,
No, we
but
do.
it's what brought us
It's what
into
we
existence
like.
here, so we should at least wrap it up. As everybody knows, we had a big recount, and that was completed last Thursday, December
Is it
12th.
over?
It's over. It's over. You know, the fat lady has sung. It is over. And there was no change in the results. It took a total of 10 days. It's not clear what the total cost of it's going to end up being. The results were unchanged, same winners, same order of election, and remarkably, and I guess this is something of a validation for the system that we have, very, very few ballots were changed. And you look at an array of all of the precincts and the candidates, and you just look at the measure of the differences, it's a sea of zeros. No changes. A couple went up one, down one, or whatever, but really
Not
it was
enough to matter.
not enough to matter. I think interestingly, I think at the official count, it was something like a 30 vote difference between 7th place to 10th place finishers. That broadened to 48 votes from Craig Kelly up at the top, and Minka Van Buzik at the bottom. There had been I think it was either 13 or 14 vote gap between 9th place person Dennis Carlone and 10th place person Minka Van Buzikum. That opened up to about 220 ballots at the end. So, you know, a lot of people say, well, what a waste of time, what a waste of money. And I guess there's a pretty good argument you can make on that point. But, you know, every once in a while, it's also a pretty good validation of the system to actually see just how accurately the system worked. And maybe it's a bit of a message to future candidates that, you know, if you're going to ask for a recount, you probably are going to get the same results.
Well, people
So-
should have the choice.
They do have the
They
choice.
should have the choice. It's important.
Yeah, but it was also an opportunity for a lot of people to learn a little bit more about the way the elections operate. I can't tell you how many times I was, you know, doing street corner professoring over at the recount, where people wanted to know, well, why do we use the type of quota that we use here, and what's the purpose of this, and what's the purpose of that? So, you know, in an unplanned way, it really turned into a classroom for a lot of people, and it was, I think, you know, as they say, you got to make a lemonade from lemons, and maybe this wasn't such a wonderful thing to have, but I think a lot of good things still rolled out of it. So I'll call it at least a break even, maybe a positive experience.
Yeah. And you know, the people I really admire from all this are the people who were doing the work. That was tedious,
Yes, it was
slow, stressful work, because if you made a mistake, God help you.
Yeah, they had enough redundancy built in so that if somebody did misread something, somebody caught it every time, and then they just went back, made the correction. So the staff from the election commission, who not only the people who are actually just working the tables and all of that, but people like Leslie Waxman and Tanya Ford, who's the executive director, and Leslie especially, they just planned this out flawlessly and executed in the best possible way, so that there really was no cause for complaint, I think, from anyone in the end.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because Tuesday, we forgot to mention, Tuesday was an election day, another one. We have one every month now, and for the congressional seat, Markey's old seat. And I actually almost forgot to vote, which would have been really distressing.
Yeah.
And I went there almost at 8 p.m. And all the workers were still there, and I was so proud to be there, and that they were all hanging in, and they've been working for a week already at the count, and then they went to the ballot box like that. It was wonderful. I really appreciated what they were doing.
Democracy at work. So let's see.
Elections are over for a while.
Elections are over for a while.
City council's done. School committee's done. The mayor's race has to happen, but we have nothing to do with that.
Right,
except
that's
gossip.
not a popular election.
And all the congressional ones are done. We were fortunate that Catherine Clark won for Congress because she's not in our district, and we won't have to have a special election in Cambridge.
Thanks.
We're really thankful.
Yeah.
So what other news do you have for us?
Well, let's see. In the last few weeks up at City Hall, there's been some interesting things that have been going down. There was, I guess it was a week ago, this is sort of a minor issue, but some people made it out as a major issue. There was a small zoning issue as well as a land disposition issue where essentially a sidewalk-wide strip of land on Ames Street, the city essentially sold to Boston Properties in order to facilitate the construction of housing. Which is something that the Cambridge Redevelopment, at least the new Cambridge Redevelopment Authority Board, and a lot of people have been advocating for years, is to actually build the housing in Kendall. So apparently that's now going to go forward. There were a few other kind of minor aspects of this that some people, sometimes I'm curious why people make issues of things, but you could, rather than have open space per parcel, you could actually distribute it to have a better plan of open space, but over the whole area rather than just on parcel by parcel. Some people made a big deal out of the fact that they were lifting the cap of, I think it were just 3 so-called fast food establishments in the area, and they were bumping it up to something like 15. I personally, I found it funny that people objected to this, because what has really happened in Kendall Square over the years is this proliferation of food trucks, which don't fit under the fast food category, but they are nothing but fast food. And honestly, that's where the demand is, and if that's what people want, I think it's appropriate that should simply be delivered, and the ordinances should not stand in the way of delivering what people are actually looking for. So anybody thinks that we're suddenly going to see nothing but a string of Burger Kings and McDonald's and whatever, I think they completely misunderstand Kendall Square. So anyway, so that was all settled.
Right?
That's settled. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle at the end where Councilor Van Musicum wanted to change her vote from yes to no, and I won't even get into that. That just sort of became a ridiculous end of the meeting a week ago. One other thing that's been kind of sort of more on the humorous side, I've been giving grief just via website to Councilor Reeves for not filing reports for the couple of committees that for which he is chair, specifically the University Relations and the Public Facilities, Arts and Celebrations Committee. And I was putting something nasty in there, like, until such time as these reports are filed, we'll assume these committees have not met, which we all knew they had met, but there were these. He gets a little tardy mark on his report card, I suppose.
You must be a teacher.
That is me. So it was actually a source of comedy last night up at City Hall when people were commenting on how.
Last night was Monday.
Last night was Monday, December
City
16th, the last City Council meeting of the current term.
So
And so the week before, there were 4 committee reports. Last night, there were 6. You know, they were all sort of being turned in late.
It's good, they all did their homework.
They all did
That's
their homework,
good.
you know, they turned in, you know, better late than never. Thank you all. That was like, but it was funny, you know, the city clerk was everybody was laughing a bit about it. So, I mean, it's not really good practice. If you're gonna hold city council subcommittee meetings, it's to do the business of the council. You issue the reports, then the full council acts on them. That's, so message to the new councilors, please write up those reports and turn them in a timely way.
Well, what it meant was the reports weren't requiring any action. That's what it
Actually-
meant. Because if you wanted action, you would have pushed the report, right?
Well, you know, it's something, a system that has sort of evolved over in recent years, is that oftentimes these committees are just sort of seen as almost like private playgrounds for the chairs to sort of discuss the things they find interesting and then sort of act unofficially on them.
Right.
You know, kind of badger a city official or two to sort of respond to you, which they'll do, you know, very much. But you know, honestly, the way the structure of the government is supposed to work is you meet, you bring it back to the full body, and the full body discusses it, and then if there are 5 votes in favor of something, which there almost always is, then you move on it. You know, it just works better that way. It's cleaner, it's better, it's more official. So anyway, that was another thing. Now, something happened last night was
At the council meeting?
at the city council meeting.
Yeah.
That's right. Was they brought up both actually it was the ordination of a zoning amendment having to do with setting up 2 zones which would be the permitted zones for setting up, let me get this right, it's
already confusing.
registered marijuana
Oh.
dispensaries. Because there was a referendum or initiative petition, was it a year ago? Not even sure. It must have
I
been
think
in
so.
it must have been in 2012, permitting the sale of medical marijuana. So each county, I think, is permitted 6,
And Cambridge is permitted.
and Middlesex County got more applications than anywhere. So the presumption is at least one will show up in Cambridge. So they didn't, you know, there are some concerns about where these things should be permitted. I mean, it's the law, so it's going to have to happen. So, but you want them next to elementary schools? Apparently not. And so there's a whole lot of complex matters about what's considered to be acceptable locations for these. So,
Can you have a pharmacy but next to an elementary school?
you know, my understanding is one of the pharmacies, and I won't name names here, was actually one of the applicants for setting up a registered marijuana dispensary.
Oh, because they don't go into pharmacies?
I imagine they could. I don't know that for sure, but I haven't read the
I
regulations
think in
closely
LA
enough.
they don't.
Yeah, but one of the things, I think it's in Colorado, where they began with the legalization of medical marijuana and then subsequently outright legalization. So I'm pretty sure, you'd have to ask them directly about this, but I'm pretty sure that the people who were drafting the regulations were drafting it with the possibility that a future referendum or initiative petition down the road might actually end up legalizing marijuana use outright in the state of Massachusetts or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And if that were to happen, I think I think they were kind of writing the regulations with that in mind as a possibility down the road. And my understanding is that there is actually, the signatures have been gathered and that may very well be one of the ballot questions in 2014.
So what did they pass?
Well, what they passed was regulations that pretty much said no-go for much of the city, but there are 2 places specifically. One is in North Point. The other one is in the vicinity of around where the Fresh Pond Shopping Center is, which is, it's funny, every time anybody says that, they say, oh, so they've designated the Fresh Pond
Oh,
Shopping
yeah.
Center as the official marijuana dispensary.
That's how it sounds.
It sounds that way. That's not exactly correct, but certainly in that area is one of the 2 zones in the city. And I think the logic was to have them, you know, on
Opposite sides.
well, maybe opposite sides, but also so that people could sort of drive in from out of town, because it's, you know, at least in principle, this is for medical use. So they didn't want people to sort of have to be sort of scurrying through every little nook and cranny of Cambridge for this. I mean, I can't imagine that this is going to be, you know, like lines wrapped around the block for this, but I don't know. Maybe I was born yesterday. But anyway, so that was one other thing that they ordained. And I think that was ordained on an 8-0 vote with Councilor Reeves abstaining. And he gave a good reason. It said there really hadn't been sufficient explanation about all of the nuances of this. So he said, I abstain, because until I really hear it all, I'm going to abstain.
Yeah.
So another thing that was interesting was there was a communication from the city manager, Richie Rossi, some appointments to the so-called Net Zero Task Force, which was sort of a big deal earlier this year, with a zoning petition, which ultimately was allowed to expire. But in the meantime, they, rather than defeat it outright, they said, we'll appoint a task force to look into what the ultimate recommendations for, energy conservation or should there be any zoning changes or whatever. So that'll be unsettled. I think they are targeting end of 2014 to come up with some recommendations.
Good, that's soon.
But it was later in the meeting last night, city council meeting, Ken actually, he sort of offered some interesting criticism about the processes. I'm gonna have to go to the tape and find this out, but we basically questioned, how is it that somebody who just blows into town, which is the person whose name was associated with the petition, can just sort of submit it and then just have this become sort of a dominant thing, when in fact it just came in out of nowhere. And I think he was basically challenging the councilors who will continue to be a little more thoughtful about not letting the tail wag the dog. And I think he was really spot on, as he often is. Another thing that happens at a last closing meeting of a city council is that all matters that are not on active matters that are on unfinished business that
disappear.
They just go away. The legislative session ends, and
well, can you imagine inheriting all those old motions?
Earlier this year, I think he went when Bob Healy retired as city manager in June 30th, the council voted to basically clean the slate and wipe away a lot of the things that were waiting report, so that the new city manager would be able to start fresh.
It is a burden.
Yeah, and in the 6 months, they've already kind of opened up the requests and respond to this and respond to that. So some of that will continue anyway, but some of the legislative matters will just go away. And then the new guys will show up.
And they can start stacking them.
And then they can start, Mr. Manager, do this, answer that, do this for me. So one other thing that's actually been dominating things in the last few months, honestly, is all this sort of, I'm going to be a little opinionated here and say this sort of nonsense about procedures. I don't think anybody disagrees with the importance of having open meetings and, sort of transparency and whatnot. But there's been this trend now where if somebody doesn't like the outcome of a vote, the next thing, the following week, a complaint gets filed and shipped off to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, saying that there was a violation of some procedure or some rules here, it's just getting kind of ridiculous. And
because someone has to deal with it, right?
Well, ultimately what happens then is then it goes to the state, and then the city and the law department have to draft a response, and then inevitably another response come back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it's time consuming, and it's, from my point of view, it's sort of unsportsmanlike. In none of these cases is there going to be any change in the outcome. So it just says, okay, you elected officials didn't vote the way I wanted you to vote, so I'm just going to make your life hard now. And I just think, I hope we can do better in the upcoming city council term. Again, this is not to be justifying any flagrant violations of open meeting laws or anything like that, but let's stop this nickel and dime stuff. It's just, it serves no purpose.
Well, and this is where the staff's really important too. They train all the new people, and hopefully, give them the rules, and here's how you don't violate the open meeting law, and here's how to be ethical, and things that people should know, but the staff there is really great at that.
Yeah, actually, Vice Mayor Simmons, as is often the case with an upcoming term, always submits an order, reminding everyone that it's time to sort of bone up on Robert's Rules of Order and learn all the matters, proper procedures.
You're not born knowing that stuff.
You're not born knowing that, and there actually are some exceptions in the way the council rules work.
And they are weird. Well,
They
for
are
example,
weird.
the filing for reconsideration we had last week, that
Absolutely
was
right.
an anomaly.
That's absolutely right.
So,
Now, another thing it's probably worth mentioning, just a few more updates, since this is now...
this is the update show now.
This is the update show. We'll talk a little more in the second half
Because no
hour
one's
on
calling
some other
us.
things. It's okay. I'll call you. No, actually, they are. Look,
Oh
look.
my God.
I see a flashing green
No,
light.
that wasn't
Okay.
it.
It was just a
Oh, that
freak
was
out.
scary. I'm going to answer this.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Hello, this is Cambridge Inside Out.
Hi, it's Floyd.
Hi, Lloyd. How are you?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good.
Are you watching the show?
What's that?
Are you watching the show?
Oh, yeah, and I've been watching the show, yeah. I've pretty much from the beginning.
Welcome.
I heard all your appeals for some calls.
What's on your mind, Lloyd?
Thank you.
I'm always interested in wanting to see, with all the interest in wanting to get exposure during campaigns, how people, after they become elected, kind of disappear. And I was calling to say that I'm hoping that maybe I could plant a seed here at CCTV for something that used to happen that I really enjoyed, and I think you probably remember the days of Glenn Kuchar.
Oh, absolutely. We're a spin-off of Glenn Kuchar. We
Yeah.
borrowed the name from him.
And how robust and how muscular that show was in terms of presenting needed information and profiles of officials in the city and what was happening in the city and keeping people up to date. So I'd like to see something like that maybe between the two of you at some point to arrange to have the newly elected candidates at some point come back
We'll do
and
that
talk
idea.
about where they're at
we'll do our
and
best.
what they're planning to do and how the Cambridge community can become involved. So I'm going to let you go because you're getting close to the end, but
All right.
that's my
Great. We
suggestion.
love that idea, and we'll take you up on it. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for calling. What a treat. Oh, my God.
There we go.
Oops. Up, off.
Off. Okay.
That was great. Thank you for calling.
Yeah,
We
that
want
was
to
great.
do that. Actually, if you have any ideas on how you would like us to proceed this next year when there aren't any elections happening, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
And we will be inviting the elected officials to come.
Absolutely. And I imagine with 4 new city councilors arriving with the Stork on January, they'll more than maybe all of them will be wanting to make a name for themselves and sort of get their stuff out there. And I imagine it won't be very hard to sort of provide exposure for them. Just a couple of last little updates here, though. With the end of the year comes, this was one of the announcements from the city the other day. They're reminding everybody that for those of you who have motor vehicles, and even those who do not have motor vehicles who want your visitor passes, is that this is the time of year to make it happen. It began actually in early November, but it continues. I think the old 2013 permits are good until the end of January.
Yeah, January 31st.
And because I live right down the street from City Hall Annex, which is where people go to get their permits, it's always great comedy at the end of January to see people who've sort of put it off until the last day start showing up at the Annex building, and you'll see actually lines not only going in the door, wrapping up the staircases around the atrium, in and out of the rooms here, because there'll be like hundreds of people waiting online, people who've pushed it off until the last day, and now they're worried that they're going to start getting tickets. So.
Oh, and people
there
always,
now.
they complain about, well, we all complain about how behind the city is with technology, but I can attest that the residents' parking permits, you can do them online easily, and they come, you just go online, put them in, and you get your sticker in the mail. That's
See?
one place where
That's what we do.
technology works.
We do it. You should
It
do it.
works.
Absolutely.
It's much better than standing in line.
That's
so.
right. Another last little update here, I'll just sort of mention quickly, is that there are, I'm a big fan that, if you want to be a real serious citizen of Cambridge, you should consider serving on one of the boards and commissions for the city. And there may be others, but there are two which have deadlines coming. One is December 20th, which is 3 days from now.
It's Friday.
This
This
Friday. If
December
anybody
20th.
who has an interest, as I certainly have over the years, in recycling, the Recycling Advisory Committee, which has been around for the last 20-so years, and I've been on it for the last 20-so years, but I won't be anymore. Not that I have anything against them, it's just because I've done my time. But their applications are due if you're interested
How
in
do you
serving.
get one?
Hmm?
How do you get an application?
You just write a letter. You
To
could
whom?
This one, believe for that one, you can send it to the city. You can always send it to the city manager anyway, because ultimately the city manager is the appointing authority for all of these.
So the city manager's office needs to get it by Friday.
Just by
December.
Friday, absolutely. Another
And
real.
I can probably go on the webpage and find out.
That's right. It's plastered all over.
CambridgeMad.gov.
Absolutely. And another one that's coming up, which is a highly specialized one, and I'm forgetting how many people are on the board, but the Affordable Housing Trust, which is a committee that actually has the city manager himself will actually serve as one of the members, as the trustee for the Affordable Housing Trust. So they deal with a lot of pretty serious decisions about the creation of affordable housing around the city. So this is
They have a vacancy too.
right. This is not a for beginners only type of committee. This is pretty serious. But if you have particular skill sets that might be appropriate for serving on the Affordable Housing Trust, the deadline for that is actually January 6th. And I thought that would be something at least some people you may want to be aware of if you have an interest in that. So anyway, with that, I think we should wind down
Yeah, thank you
this
so
show.
much for calling and stay. We have a brief commercial break and then we'll be right back.
That's right, 3 minutes. So until then,
This
let's
is
see.
Cambridge Inside and
Out.